The first time I held my sister-in-law's newborn daughter, something inside me went quiet. Not shattered. Not yet. Just quiet, the way a room feels right after the power goes out. I remember her tiny face, the soft round cheeks, the single dimple that appeared whenever her mouth twitched, the faint little crease on her chin. I'd seen that chin 1,000 times before. I'd kissed it. I'd touched it in the dark when my husband, Daniel, was half asleep and murmuring something I never fully caught. But on that day, standing in the hospital room that smelled of antiseptic and warmed blankets, I saw that chin on a baby that wasn't mine. And it was his. Daniel's. My husband's. The nurse kept talking, something about the baby's weight, her breathing, whether she was latching properly, but her voice sounded miles away. My eyes just kept drifting back to the little girl's face. That tiny, uncanny resemblance. Those familiar contours. That subtle shape of the nose, the faint curl of the lips. I blinked hard, trying to steady myself. People see resemblances all the time. Babies can look like anyone, an uncle, a cousin, even an old family friend. And I told myself that. I whispered it inside my own head like a chant, because my heart was already stirring with something I didn't want to name. Doubt. The kind of doubt that doesn't show up loudly, it creeps. I turned toward Daniel. He stood by the window, back to me, staring out at the parking lot like something out there required all his attention. His shoulders were stiff, too stiff for a man meeting his new niece for the first time. We should head back soon, he said without turning. Let them rest. His voice trembled. Just a tiny shake. You could miss it if you weren't listening carefully. But I was. Because by then, the silence between us had already begun to feel heavier. He'd spent the last 3 months helping his sister. Late-night drives. Early morning visits. Odd excuses. Missed dinners. A sudden protectiveness that felt new and strange. Back then, I tried to be the trusting wife. The understanding one. The supportive one. But as I stood in that hospital room, cradling a child who looked more like my husband than my own son did, I felt something inside me shift. Like a door quietly unlocking. Like a truth whispering, pay attention. And I did. I paid attention to everything. Because I knew, somehow I just knew, that nothing about my life was as simple as it had seemed a few hours earlier. That baby wasn't just a baby. She was a message. A clue. A mirror held up to a lie I hadn't yet seen. And I wish I could say I was wrong. My name is Clara Morgan, and I live just outside Richmond, Virginia, in a neighborhood where the houses have white fences and the lawns stay neat because people care what their neighbors think. I used to care too. About appearances. About looking like the couple who had everything under control. The stable marriage, the tidy home, the polite smiles at block parties, the we're doing just fine nods over grocery carts and garden hedges. For most of my adult life, I believed in simple things. Routine. Kindness. Fairness. The quiet comfort of someone who says they love you every night and reaches for your hand under the covers. Daniel was that person, or at least, he was the version of that person I married. We met young. He was 27, I was 25. He loved to cook, and I loved how he moved around the kitchen humming old Motown songs. We built a life slowly, carefully, the way people do when they think they'll grow old together. Our home wasn't perfect, but it was ours. Sunday pancakes, evening walks, tea on the back porch when the sky softened into pink and gold. Little things, the good ones, the kind you hold on to because they feel like blessings. I clung to them, maybe too tightly, because sometimes when life begins to fall apart, the first thing we lose is the things we believed were solid. Daniel had always been close to his sister, Julia, but close turned into something different after her separation. She'd left her boyfriend and moved into a small apartment on the other side of town, and suddenly, Daniel became her protector. At first, I understood. Family steps in. We help each other. It's what I was taught growing up in rural North Carolina, where neighbors borrowed sugar and news spread faster than lightning. But as weeks turned into months, something changed. His excuses became thinner. His visits became more frequent. And his explanations, always rushed, always vague, started to echo in my head late at night. Still, I told myself not to overthink. That's what a reasonable wife does, right? She breathes. She trusts. She doesn't imagine storms where there's only rain. But that baby, that tiny, perfect baby with Daniel's exact dimple, she was the moment the rain turned into thunder. Before I take you deeper into what happened, into the unraveling, the suspicion, the betrayal I never saw coming, I want to thank you for being here with me. Stories like mine aren't easy to tell, and they're not always easy to hear. If my story resonates with you, or if you've ever felt that quiet tug in your chest telling you something wasn't right, stay with me till the end. And if you feel moved, consider supporting the channel so you don't miss new stories. Your presence here matters more than you know. That night, after leaving the hospital, the drive home felt different. Quiet. Not peaceful quiet, but the heavy, weighted kind. Daniel kept one hand on the steering wheel, the other resting on his lap, tapping nervously. He didn't play music, didn't joke, didn't talk about how cute his niece was. He didn't ask what I thought. He didn't even look at me. When we got home, he went straight to the shower without kissing my forehead like he always did. I heard the water pounding against the tiles, too loud, too long, almost like he wanted the noise to drown out something inside him. I sat on the edge of our bed, my hands still smelling faintly of baby lotion. And I whispered into the dim room, "Why does she look like you, Daniel?" It was the first time I said it out loud. And the moment I did, the air in the room shifted, as if the truth had been waiting for me to give it a voice. I remember the morning my peace cracked like thin glass. It was a Wednesday, one of those ordinary midweek days where nothing special is supposed to happen. The kind of day where you barely register the hours passing because you're just doing life the same way you did it yesterday and the day before that. Repetition can be comforting. It can also blind you. I had packed Daniel's lunch like I always did. Turkey on rye because he liked pretending he ate healthy. A neat stack of crisps tucked into one corner. A small square of the lemon shortbread his mother taught me to bake when we first got engaged. I slipped a note inside like I had done since our second year of marriage, a tiny hello just to remind him he was loved. When he came downstairs, he didn't look at me. Or maybe he did, but it was quick, the kind of glance you give a stranger on the pavement when you're passing them too fast to care. He seemed preoccupied, tapping his fingers on the worktop like he was keeping time to a song I couldn't hear. "You all right, love?" I asked him. Yeah, just work," he said, but the words were automatic and hollow and somehow too quick. He kissed my cheek, but he missed my skin. His lips hit somewhere near the air beside me. I told myself not to make something out of nothing. We were adults. Married people have off days all the time. I cleaned up breakfast and went on with my morning routine. Hoovering, wiping counters, sorting the laundry into little mountains on the hallway floor. But then the buzzing started. His phone, left behind on the dining table. At first I ignored it. Who doesn't get notifications all day? But then it buzzed again. And again. And again. 6 times in under a minute. The sound was sharp, like a tiny electric jolt running up the back of my neck. I don't normally check his phone. We never had that kind of marriage. Daniel always told me transparency builds trust. And I believed him. I wanted to believe him. I loved the man too much to imagine he could have shadows haunting the corners of his life. But the screen lit up and the name appeared. Ellie. Just that. No surname. No emoji. Just Ellie. The message preview showed the first few words. Last night was. And then it cut off. Last night was what? Last night was good. Last night was a mistake. Last night was the beginning or the end of something. My heartbeat grew louder than the phone itself. A steady thump 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 that felt almost out of rhythm with my body. My hands trembled so badly I had to press them against my thighs to stop them shaking. I stepped away from the table, then stepped back, then away again. Like someone pacing a cliff edge, trying to convince themselves they're just admiring the view and not contemplating the drop. I didn't check the phone. Not yet. I couldn't do it. Some fears feel too heavy to touch directly. And some truths feel too sharp. Sharp enough to split your entire life in half with one swipe of a screen. So I spent the rest of my day trying to outrun my own imagination. I did the washing. I folded sheets that didn't need folding. I scrubbed the stovetop even though I'd cleaned it 2 days earlier. I vacuumed until I could smell the motor overheating. But no matter what I did, no matter how much noise I made, the silence around me felt heavier, like the whole house was holding its breath. He called around lunchtime saying he would be late. Again. He didn't sound apologetic, just distracted, like he was explaining the weather to someone in a rush. I asked what time I should expect him. He said he didn't know. Things were busy. He hung up faster than he ever used to, and I just stood there, phone tucked against my ear, listening to the dial tone, feeling like I'd just swallowed something heavy and bitter. By evening, the sky had turned the color of wet slate, the kind of dark that makes you want to turn on every lamp in the house just to keep the loneliness from settling in your bones. I made dinner for one because he wasn't home. I stared at the empty chair across from mine and felt a sting behind my ribs. A pressure. A knowing. When the door finally opened, it was nearly 11. He smelled like someone else's perfume. Not strong, but enough. Just enough to rewrite every memory I had of us sitting together at night. Of him sliding into bed behind me. Of the warmth I thought belonged to me. He walked past me as if nothing was wrong. As if nothing about our lives had shifted out of place. As if I hadn't spent hours imagining the worst. "You ate already?" he asked, grabbing a bottle of water. "Yeah," I said, because what else was there to say? He nodded. Good. Then he went upstairs. No hug. No kiss. No lingering glance. Nothing. Just the sound of his footsteps fading with each step. That night I lay beside him in the dark. His back turned toward me. A line of cold air between us. I stared at the ceiling and tried to breathe normally. Maybe I'm mistaken. Maybe Ellie is just a coworker. Maybe last night was just work drinks. Maybe the perfume is nothing. Maybe the distance is stress. Maybe I'm imagining everything. But my mind wouldn't stop whispering. If everything is so innocent, why does your heart feel like it's preparing for a disaster? I didn't sleep. I only watched him. His shoulders rising and falling in a peaceful rhythm. A rhythm I no longer recognized. Something had begun. Something quiet. Something dangerous. Something that would soon change everything I thought I knew. And deep down, in the softest part of myself, I felt the first shadow of the truth taking shape, even if I wasn't ready to face it yet. The morning after that sleepless night, I woke up feeling like someone had quietly rearranged the furniture inside my chest. Nothing fit where it used to. Nothing felt familiar. I moved slowly, carefully, as if a single wrong gesture might shatter me. Daniel was already downstairs when I finally got up. He was dressed too neatly for a Thursday, hair styled the way he only bothered with when he wanted to impress someone. Not me. Not anymore. He barely acknowledged me. "Coffee," he said. "Already had some," I replied. He nodded and scrolled on his phone, thumb moving in a rhythm too smooth, too practiced. I watched him for a moment, trying to pretend the ache under my ribs was just tiredness. But the truth sat heavy and undeniable between us. There was something he wasn't saying. Something he was hiding in plain sight. He left early again. No kiss. No goodbye. No lingering moment at the door like he used to offer me without thinking. After he left, the silence in the house settled over me like a blanket with too much weight. I was tired of feeling foolish. Tired of pretending. Tired of tiptoeing around the possibility of betrayal. It was his phone that finally pushed everything over the edge. He had forgotten it again. It sat on the dining table where he tossed his keys when he rushed out. The screen was face up. The notifications were silent but visible. And there it was again. "Ellie." Another preview. "We still on for tonight?" A small heart emoji at the end. My breath caught. My pulse stuttered. My hands went cold and hot all at once. For a moment, I wanted to run. Not physically. Not out the door. But away from the truth. Away from the moment everything breaks. But the thing about the truth is, it doesn't care about your readiness. It arrives anyway. The phone wasn't locked. My heart sank so fast I thought I heard it hit something inside me. I shouldn't look. I shouldn't invade his privacy. I shouldn't cross the line he told me not to cross. But he had crossed so many lines already. Without hesitation. Without guilt. Without any sign of remembering the vows he once whispered into my hands. I opened the messages. The screen filled with words that didn't belong to me. Affection that wasn't mine. Promises that weren't made in our home. Pictures taken in places he told me he was too busy to visit. He told her, "I miss you so much. I need you. I think about you every night." And she replied, "I miss us too. Last night felt perfect. When can we be together properly?" My knees almost buckled. I had to grip the back of a chair to stay standing. The world tilted slightly and refused to settle back into place. There were photos. Selfies of her smiling in the soft light of what looked like a hotel room. His hand in one of them. On her waist. A ring on his finger that suddenly felt like a stranger's property. There were voice notes. Hushed. Intimate. Soft. Like words spoken in the dark against someone's skin. And then the one message that broke me completely. Soon. I'll talk to her. I promise. I just need the right moment. Her. Not your name. Not my name. Just her. Like I was a problem to solve. An obstacle. A task. A barrier between him and a life he was already living with someone else. I sank onto the dining chair. Phone still in my trembling hand. I don't know how long I sat there. Minutes. Hours maybe. Time had no meaning. Only heartbreak did. When I finally stood, I felt strangely calm. Not peaceful. Not numb. But steady. Like the kind of stillness that comes right before a storm. I needed answers. And I wasn't going to get them alone. I drove to his workplace. The entire way there I stared straight ahead. Barely blinking. Barely breathing. Wondering what kind of woman I had become. And what kind of man he had turned into. When I arrived, the receptionist gave me a tight smile. He's not here today. My stomach twisted. But he said he had a full day of meetings. She shook her head. No meetings. No schedule. He hasn't come in since Tuesday. Tuesday. The day before the perfume. The day before the messages. The day before my whole world started leaking cracks. Do you know where he might be? I asked, trying to keep my voice from shaking. She hesitated just a second too long. And in that pause I found my answer. I left. I didn't thank her. I didn't wait. I just walked out before my emotions spilled out of me like something uncontrollable. I sat in the car, gripping the steering wheel so tightly my fingers went numb. The betrayal now had a shape. A smell. A name. A location. A timeline. I opened his phone again and scrolled through the messages, looking for clues. An address popped up. A hotel on the edge of town. Room 214. It was right there. Bold. Clear. Undeniable. Meet you tonight. Same place. Room 214. My breathing slowed. Not calm. Not normal. But measured. One breath at a time. In. Out. In. Out. I wasn't going to wait for him to confess. I wasn't going to sit at home and pretend ignorance. I wasn't going to allow myself to be erased quietly. I drove straight to the hotel. The building felt too polished. Too quiet. Too private. A perfect place for lies to bloom unnoticed. Perfect for secrets. Perfect for the kind of betrayal that hides under crisp white sheets and mood lighting. I walked inside. The lobby smelled like lavender and money. The receptionist smiled at me politely. How can I help you? I needed to be smart. I needed to stay steady. I leaned forward slightly. My husband checked in earlier, but he texted me the wrong room number. Could you remind me which one he's in? She didn't even hesitate. Room 214. Second floor. To your left. I thanked her. My voice sounding like it belonged to someone else. Someone stronger. Someone braver. The elevator ride was slow. Infuriatingly slow. Every second felt like a taunt. A reminder of what I was about to walk into. When the doors finally opened, I stepped out into a carpeted hallway. Soft lights. Muted colors. Calm everywhere. Except inside me. I walked to the door. 214. Black numbers on a silver plate. I stared at it. Just for a moment. Breathing. Gathering myself. Summoning whatever courage lived inside my shaking body. Then I knocked. A pause. Soft movement from inside. The click of a lock. The slow turning of a handle. And the door opened. Daniel stood there. Shirt undone. hair tousled, eyes widening, shock washing over his face like cold water. Behind him, Ellie, wrapped in one of those hotel robes, her lipstick smudged, her expression freezing mid-smile. And in that moment, in that doorway, in that narrow slice of time, my entire marriage ended. Not with yelling, not with questions, not with dramatic tears, just a quiet truth. A truth so clear and cold. It sliced right through me. He had chosen someone else. Long before I ever knocked on that door. For a moment, none of us spoke. The air in that hallway felt too tight, too thin, like the whole hotel was holding its breath with me. Daniel's mouth opened slightly, but no sound came out. Ellie shifted behind him, clutching the robe tighter around her chest, like she suddenly remembered she wasn't supposed to be seen like this. I didn't shout. I didn't shake. I didn't cry. I just looked at him. Really looked. And for the first time in our marriage, he looked small. Not physically, emotionally. He looked like a child caught in the middle of a game he thought nobody else would ever discover. Maddie, he whispered, stepping forward as if he could block my view, shield the truth, hide the pieces of himself scattered behind him like crumbs. I lifted my hand. Don't, I said softly. Not one step. He froze in the half-open doorway. The robe tie slipped from Ellie's hand and fell against her leg with a small, embarrassed sound. Maddie, I can explain, he said. Explain. Explain why your shirt is unbuttoned. Explain why her lipstick is on your neck. Explain why you checked into a hotel room you said didn't exist. I wasn't there for explanations. I wasn't there for apologies formed out of panic rather than remorse. I wasn't there to negotiate my dignity down just so he could feel less ashamed. I know everything, I said quietly. I saw the messages. His face changed instantly, like a flash of lightning hitting a dark field. Something flickered through him. Guilt. Fear. Panic. Maybe all three. You went through my phone? His voice sharpened, clinging to the one thing he could control. I went through the truth, I replied. Your phone just happened to be holding it. Ellie looked at him with something like disappointment, as if she thought he'd handle this better, as if she expected him to be the kind of man who owned his decisions. That alone stung deeper than anything she could have said. He rubbed his forehead, pacing just inside the doorway. This isn't what it looks like. I breathed out a humorless laugh. Daniel, if this looked any clearer, it would be in high definition. Ellie's voice entered the space timidly. Maddie, we didn't mean to hurt you. I turned my eyes to her, slow and steady. She flinched. That's exactly what you meant to do, I said gently. You just hoped I wouldn't find out. She looked away. I could have stood there and asked the questions every betrayed woman asks. Why her? When did it start? What did I do wrong? Was I not enough? But I knew better. The answers never heal. They only carve deeper wounds. So I stepped back from the doorway. Daniel, I said, my voice even, pack your things before I get home. You don't live in my house anymore. His eyes widened. Home? Maddie, where am I supposed to go? I blinked slowly. You should have asked yourself that before you booked a hotel room with someone else. He reached for me, desperately now. Please, don't do this. Don't end us like this. Let's talk. The elevator behind me chimed. A soft ding. A reminder that time moves forward even when your life doesn't. I turned slightly toward the sound, then back to him. Daniel, the moment you opened this door, I whispered, we ended. This time when he reached again, I stepped back. A deliberate, painful step. One that untied whatever small thread was left between us. He stopped. His arms dropped. He looked at me like a man watching someone walk away from a burning building, but knowing he started the fire. I didn't need to stay any longer. I didn't need more pain. I didn't need closure from someone incapable of offering it. I pressed the elevator button and stepped inside. As the doors closed, I saw him still standing there, half-dressed, half-ashamed, half a man I used to know. The ride down was silent. Too silent. My reflection in the mirrored elevator wall didn't look like me. She looked like someone who had aged 10 years in 10 minutes. Someone who knew too much now. Someone who couldn't go back to how things were. When the doors opened, I walked out and breathed in the crisp outside air. Then my body reacted before my mind did. My hands shook. My legs faltered. My chest tightened so sharply I had to brace myself against the nearest column outside the hotel. The tears came quietly. Slow, reluctant, hot against cold cheeks. Not wailing, not dramatic. Just heartbreak moving downward like gravity had claimed a new part of me. I stood there until my breathing steadied again. Until my pulse remembered how to behave. Until the ache loosened just enough for me to move. I went home. Every mile of the drive felt unreal, like watching someone else's life from outside the glass. The house looked different when I pulled up. Different now that I knew I'd be living in it alone. Different now that lies had crossed the threshold before I ever knew they existed. Inside, I walked room to room collecting his things. Not angrily, not violently, just with the quiet determination of someone who refuses to let betrayal take up space any longer. His shirts, his cologne, his stack of half-read books, his drawer of tools, his charger, his shoes by the door. Each item I placed carefully by the staircase. A goodbye he forced me to give. Then I paused in the hallway, my hand resting on the wall, staring at the framed picture of us on our wedding day. He was laughing. I was glowing. Neither of us imagined a hotel room 3 years later would be the true ending. My fingers trembled as I lifted the frame off the nail. I didn't break it. Didn't smash the glass. Didn't tear the photo. I simply placed it face down on the console table. A quiet, final gesture. Then my phone buzzed. It was him. Daniel, please. Talk to me. I'm begging you. Daniel, I made a mistake. One mistake. Don't throw everything away. Daniel, I need to see you. Please, Maddie. I stared at the messages. Not with longing. Not with confusion. But with a strange, sharp clarity. He didn't stop because he loved me. He stopped because he got caught. And I finally understood the difference. When I didn't reply, he called. 6 times. Then 7. Then 8. I silenced the phone. That evening I packed a small overnight bag for myself. Not to run. Not to escape. Just to breathe somewhere that didn't smell like ghosts. I checked into a small lakeside and 30 minutes away. The clerk didn't ask questions. Didn't stare too long. He simply handed me the key card. Room 15. A place untouched by betrayal. I stood in the doorway of that quiet room and exhaled. Not fully. Not freely. But enough. Enough to realize I wasn't broken. Just bruised. And bruises heal when you stop returning to the things that hurt you. I sat on the edge of the bed. Let the silence wrap around me. And prepared myself for what would come next. Because this wasn't the end of the story. Not even close. This was the moment I stopped being passive in my own life. The moment I decided the truth wouldn't stay hidden in hotel rooms anymore. Not his lies. Not his affair. Not the secret he didn't know I already suspected. His sister's baby. The one who looked exactly like him. This was the moment I decided. I was going to uncover everything. No matter how painful it was. No matter who it exposed. The lakeside inn room felt like a place suspended outside of time. Quiet. Still. Neutral. I sat on the edge of the bed with my overnight bag, still zipped, my hands resting loosely in my lap. My body felt heavy, but my mind was sharper than it had been in months. Maybe years. That night, I didn't cry again. I didn't collapse. I didn't spiral. Instead, I opened my notebook, the one I used for grocery lists and appointment reminders, and wrote one sentence at the top of a blank page. I deserved to know the whole truth. It wasn't anger. It wasn't revenge. It was self-respect. Something I had misplaced somewhere between trusting too hard and listening too softly. Below that sentence, I wrote another. And his sister's baby wasn't a coincidence. That thought had been sitting inside me for weeks, quiet, uncomfortable, confusing. I had ignored it then. But now? Now it felt like a puzzle piece I couldn't overlook. I thought back to that baby shower. To Ellie holding the newborn in a hospital photo she had posted online. The shape of the eyes. The little dimple on the left cheek. The way Daniel stared at the baby longer than a man usually admires a niece. And the thing that haunted me most, something that made me feel guilty for even thinking it at the time, was how badly Daniel wanted to keep me away from Ellie during her pregnancy. She's vulnerable, he'd say. She doesn't want visitors. She's overwhelmed. She just needs privacy. But now everything looked different under the dim lamp of that room. I spent that night reading the text messages again. Not to hurt myself. Not to torture my heart. But to understand the timeline. I scrolled. Slide after slide. Month after month. Until it hit me. They'd been talking like this, comforting each other, relying on each other, lying to me for almost a year. Almost exactly the length of Ellie's pregnancy. When I reached those messages from months back. The ones that said, I promise I'll take care of everything. And you're not alone. I'll handle it. And she must never know. My hand tightened around the phone until my fingers went numb. They weren't just cheating. They were hiding something much darker. I slept maybe 3 hours that night, light sleep, the kind where your body shuts down but your mind keeps driving. At dawn, I checked out of the inn. The clerk gave me a warm nod as he handed me the receipt. Hope things work out for you, he said softly, as if he knew, somehow, that I was stepping into a different version of my life. I didn't go home. Not yet. Instead, I drove straight to Ellie's apartment building. Her car wasn't there. Good. I didn't want her. Not yet. The building was quiet, morning sun hitting the windows with that soft orange glow that makes everything look gentler than the world really is. I walked inside, climbed the stairs slowly, thoughtfully. Every step felt like a beat in a long, haunting rhythm. I paused at her door. I wasn't there to fight, or scream, or accuse. I was there for the truth. So I knocked. A pause, then footsteps. Then the door cracked open. And standing there was her neighbor, Miss Franklin, wearing a floral robe and clutching her morning coffee. Oh, hello, she said, surprised. You're Daniel's wife, aren't you? The words hit harder than they should have. Yes, I replied, keeping my voice calm. Oh, Ellie told me you might stop by eventually, but I didn't think she meant so soon. My heart slowed. She mentioned me coming? Oh, yes, Miss Franklin continued casually, sipping her coffee. She said things were about to come out one way or another. My pulse kicked. Hard. Does she live here? I asked gently. For now. She leaned closer, lowering her voice. But you shouldn't worry, dear. These things happen when people make complicated choices. My stomach tightened. Complicated how? She frowned slightly as if searching for the right word. Well, she always had visitors at odd hours. I assumed it was Daniel helping her. He came by so often I thought he lived here. My throat thickened. He visited her? I whispered. Oh yes. You didn't know. I kept my face still, calm, composed, though inside my soul was flipping through months of memories trying to make them fit into a new, horrifying shape. Could I ask when you last saw him here? I murmured. Last week, she replied cheerfully. They were arguing in the hallway. Something about the baby deserving more. Her words cracked through me. The baby, deserving more. A hallway argument. My husband. At Ellie's apartment. Last week. My chest felt tight again, but controlled. Managed. Thank you, I whispered. Miss Franklin nodded sympathetically and closed her door, humming softly as she disappeared inside. I stood in that hallway for a long moment. And then I made a decision. For weeks I'd been the passive one. The trusting wife. The one waiting for answers to fall into her lap. Not anymore. I turned and left the building. I got into my car. And I drove straight to the one place where the truth couldn't hide behind hotel room doors, whispering lies in the dark. The hospital where Ellie gave birth. A birth certificate doesn't lie. Genetic records don't lie. Dates don't lie. I walked inside, shoulders squared, breath steady. At the reception desk, a young woman in blue scrubs looked up. Good morning. How can I help you? I'm looking for information about a patient who delivered a baby here about 3 months ago, I said calmly. Her name is Ellie Carter. The receptionist smiled politely. I can't share personal medical records without authorization. I expected that. I didn't come unprepared. So I leaned forward just slightly and said, I understand. But I'm her sister-in-law. And there may have been an error in the documentation involving my husband. Her eyes flickered. Concern replaced politeness. Errors in documentation were serious. They could cause legal complications, insurance issues, even custody questions. "Give me a moment," she said. She stepped away, spoke quietly with another nurse, then disappeared into a back office. Minutes felt like hours. When she finally returned, she held a small slip of paper, an information release form. "Since you're a family member," she said gently, "you can request the non-medical birth details for review. It won't include health data, but it will include parent information, dates, and signatures." My pulse throbbed at my temples. "Thank you," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. I filled out the form, signed my name with a hand that didn't feel like mine. 10 minutes later, she handed me a sealed envelope. "Let us know if anything looks incorrect," she said kindly. "We want to make sure everything is accurate." I stepped outside into the crisp air. The envelope felt thick, important, heavy in a way that told me, before I even opened it, that my life was about to shift again. I sat in my car, laid the envelope across my lap, and slid my thumb under the seal. Inside was a single sheet of paper. Birth certificate copy, official signatures, mother's full name, delivery date, time, hospital ID. I scanned it slowly, carefully, line by line. Then my eyes reached the line labeled, name of father, and I felt everything inside me go utterly, painfully still. It listed a name, a full legal name, not blank, not unknown, not withheld. It said, Daniel Carter, my husband, the father of his sister's baby. I covered my mouth with my hand, not to stop a scream. No, to hold in the sound of my heart breaking in a way betrayal alone could never have done. This wasn't just an affair. This was the truth he was prepared to hide for the rest of our lives. This was blood. This was family. This was a child. This was a betrayal so layered, so twisted, so devastating that even tears couldn't form. I closed my eyes, and something inside me hardened. Not anger, not hatred, clarity. I didn't need more evidence. I didn't need his side of the story. I didn't need anyone to interpret the truth for me. It was right there, in black ink, on legal paper. Daniel wasn't just a cheater. He was the father of his own sister's child. And I knew, with a calmness that scared me, that this truth could not stay hidden anymore. Not from me. Not from the people who needed to know. Not from the world he lied to. I didn't expect the healing to come the way it did, slowly, quietly, like a room that had been dark for years and suddenly someone pulled the curtains open just an inch. Enough for light to slip in, but not enough to blind you. In the weeks after the court hearing, my house felt unfamiliar. Not because Mark was gone, but because I finally had space to hear myself think again. The silence wasn't empty. It was peaceful. I could breathe in it. I kept expecting the loneliness to break me, but it never came. Instead, it felt like the first calm day after a long hurricane, where everything that survived is still standing for a reason. And I think I realized, I was one of those things. I rebuilt my routines from the ground up, like a woman relearning how to live without tiptoeing around someone else's moods. I rearranged the furniture. I bought myself fresh sheets. I started cooking again, not rushed meals to keep a husband pleased, but slow dishes full of garlic, basil, warmth. Simple things became my freedom. My mornings stopped feeling like a performance. My evenings stopped feeling like a waiting room. And for the first time in my adult life, I wasn't apologizing for existing. But healing isn't just peace. It's truth. And mine came knocking one afternoon in the least poetic way imaginable, a knock at the door, sharp and unfamiliar. When I opened it, Emily's father stood on the step. Not Mark. Emily's real father. I had only seen him in photos Mark claimed were old or not worth talking about. A man with Mark's jawline but kinder eyes. A man who had never once tried to contact us because, I would soon learn, Mark had lied to him too. He held a folded envelope in his hands. "Are you Claire?" he asked. "Yes. Thank you, and I need to talk." We sat at the dining table. The same table where I'd once rehearsed my lies without knowing they were lies. The same table where I'd written in a notebook called For Tomorrow. The same table where my life had broken open. He explained everything in a quiet, trembling voice. He didn't know his daughter was missing. He didn't know Mark had taken her. He didn't know I had been told a fabricated story about a woman who never existed. He'd found out because detectives finally reached him after the arrest. He brought court documents, evidence, timelines, each piece adjusting the truth I thought I knew. But the strangest thing happened as he spoke. I didn't panic. I didn't crumble. I didn't even cry. I just understood. Because deep down, I had already accepted the truth when the DNA results came out. This man wasn't ripping open a wound, he was closing one. When he finished, he looked at me with guilt etched into every line of his face. "I'm sorry," he whispered, "for everything he dragged you into. You deserved better." And for the first time, instead of hearing pity, I heard recognition. I heard someone saying aloud what I had only dared to say in my head. I did deserve better. I walked him to the door, and before he left, he said something that stayed with me. "You're not the woman he described. You're stronger than he ever let you believe." After he drove away, I sat on the steps for a long time, watching dust swirl in the sunlight. And it hit me, Mark had spent years dimming me, making me smaller, feeding me stories that turned his shortcomings into my responsibilities. But this man, this complete stranger connected to the worst part of my life, saw me clearly in minutes. Healing sometimes comes from the most unexpected angles. In the months that followed, life softened even more. I went back to work part-time at the local community center, helping organize writing groups for women who needed an outlet for the things they couldn't say out loud. It felt good to be part of something gentle, something honest. I joined a weekend market where I sold small hand-painted bookmarks with tiny affirmations, things like, "You survived the fire," and "You are allowed to begin again." They weren't fancy, but people loved them. Maybe because most of us are walking around holding stories only half-processed, waiting for a sign that says we're not alone. I never dated again, not because I was broken, but because I was finally whole. And I liked being whole. Every so often, I'd spot Emily's father at the park with her. She was taller now, brighter, safer. He never brought her to speak to me, and I never asked. Some chapters don't need sequels. Some endings are enough. But once, just once, she looked over from the swings and waved at me. A small wave. Soft. Shy. And I waved back. No anger. No loss. Just gratitude that the story ended the way it did, with truth, with safety, with a child in the right hands. And with me finally emerging from the shadows I'd lived in far too long. I rebuilt my life not with grand gestures, but with daily forgiveness, forgiving myself for not seeing the signs, for staying too long, for trusting too much. Little by little, I realized forgiveness wasn't approving what happened. It was releasing myself from carrying it forever. Now, when I tell this story, I don't tell it with bitterness. I tell it with peace. Because what happened didn't break me. It revealed me. I remember my old self, the woman hunched over a notebook labeled "For Tomorrow," trying to survive a life built on lies. And I want to whisper to her. Tomorrow came. And it was kinder than you expected. Thank you, my dear, for staying with me right until the very end. If this story touched your heart, please give it a like and share your thoughts down in the comments. Your voice truly matters here. And if you haven't already, subscribe to the channel so you never miss a new story. Take care of your heart. Be well.